Spring, Montana Territory, 1883. The land did not care who you had been before. It only answered to who you were willing to become. Eliza Moore stood at the edge of Hawthorne Ranch with dust clinging to the hem of her dress and hunger tightening her ribs like wire. The wagon that had carried her west was already gone, wheels disappearing into the long road behind her. She had paid the driver with her last coin and a silver thimble that had belonged to her mother. Now there was nothing left to give. Ahead of her stretched open land and weather-worn fences, cattle shifting slow in the distance. A ranch built for a family that never came. Eliza swallowed and stepped forward anyway. She found him near the training pen, working a restless bay colt. The horse tossed its head, hooves biting into the dirt, but the man stayed calm, voice low, hands steady. He moved like someone who understood that fear could not be beaten out of a creature, only outlasted. When he finally eased the horse to stillness and dismounted, Eliza didn't wait for courage. She had used it all already. "Sir," she said. He turned, tall, broad shoulders, sun-creased eyes the color of old river stone. Not cruel, not soft, just tired in a way that came from long responsibility. "Yes?" Her voice shook despite her effort. "Please, take me on. I'll work. Cooking, cleaning, anything you need." He studied her without interrupting, the worn satchel at her side, the rawness of her hands, the way she stood straight even while trembling. "I don't have wages to ask," she added. "Just a place to sleep." Silence stretched. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eliza Moore. I'm Caleb Ward." She nodded like the name mattered more than food. "I won't be trouble." Caleb glanced past her, across land that had known too much quiet. "You're already here," he said. "That's trouble enough." Her heart dropped. Then he continued, "But I don't turn away someone who walks this far with nothing but truth." He motioned toward the bunkhouse. "You eat first, then we'll talk work." Her knees nearly gave. That night, she slept on a narrow cot beneath a patched quilt. It felt unreal. The safety, the warmth, the smell of bread still lingering in her hair. She did not cry. Crying had a way of reopening doors she had shut to survive. Morning came before she was ready. Eliza rose before dawn, lighting the stove, scrubbing pans, mending torn cloth she found folded near the sink. She worked until her hands burned because stopping meant remembering. Caleb noticed everything but said little. Days passed, then weeks. He never asked about the thin scars on her wrists or the way she startled at raised voices. He simply handed her coffee each morning and left space where questions might have lived. One afternoon, while repairing fence posts together, her grip slipped. Blood welled. Caleb tore cloth from his sleeve and wrapped her hand without comment. "You don't need to bleed to earn a place," he said. She met his eyes. "I do." He didn't argue, just nodded, as if understanding cost more than words. That evening, she sat on the bunkhouse steps watching the horizon burn gold. "Do you think people can start over?" she asked quietly. Caleb leaned against the rail. "Out here, that's the only reason anyone comes." She smiled then, small, unsure, but real. And somewhere in the land between silence and wind, something began that neither of them dared name yet. The ranch settled into a rhythm Eliza had never known before. Not hurried, not loud, just steady. Like breathing after holding your lungs too long, morning light crept through the bunkhouse window, pale and gentle. Eliza rose before the sun, as she always did now. She moved quietly, not from fear, but from habit. The kind learned when noise once meant trouble. In the kitchen, she kneaded dough with slow, careful strength. The scent of yeast and warmth filled the room. Outside, a rooster crowed, and somewhere near the barn, wood knocked against wood, Caleb already awake, already working. She found herself listening for him, not because she needed him, because his presence had become grounding. When she stepped outside with a bucket of scraps, She saw him repairing a loose rail along the south fence. His sleeves were rolled, forearms dusted with dirt and sweat. He worked without hurry, as if the fence would wait as long as he needed. "You'll wear that hammer thin," she said. He glanced up, surprised by her voice, then smiled faintly. "Better the hammer than the fence." She set the bucket down and hesitated. "I made biscuits. I'll wash up." They ate in quiet comfort. It wasn't awkward anymore. Silence no longer pressed, it rested. Later that morning, a rider appeared on the western rise. Eliza noticed first. A lone figure on horseback, moving fast. Caleb stiffened the moment he saw him. His jaw set, eyes narrowing. "Who is it?" she asked. "Trouble," he said simply. The rider dismounted hard at the gate, boots hitting dirt with intent. He was lean, sharp-eyed, wearing a coat too clean for honest ranch work. "Caleb Ward," the man called. "You avoiding town now?" Caleb stepped forward, placing himself subtly between Eliza and the stranger. "Elias Mercer. Didn't know you rode this far west." Elias smirked. "Didn't think you'd notice." His gaze flicked to Eliza, lingered. "And who's this?" Eliza straightened. "I work here." "For free?" Elias asked lightly. Caleb's voice dropped. "That's enough." Elias chuckled. "Relax. Just came to talk business." Caleb crossed his arms. "Say it. You've got land, north pasture especially. Cattle prices are climbing. I want to lease." "I don't lease. You will," Elias said, stepping closer, "or I'll take it another way." The air tightened. Eliza felt the old fear stir, the kind that smelled like debt and loss and men who thought no was negotiable. Caleb didn't raise his voice. "You're done here." Elias laughed, backing away slowly. "Think about it, and think about who you let sleep under your roof." He mounted and rode off, dust curling behind him like a warning. Eliza didn't speak until he was gone. "Is he dangerous?" Caleb exhaled. "Only to people who don't stand their ground." She nodded, but her chest felt tight. That night, she dreamed of doors closing. 2 days later, the letter arrived. Eliza found it folded on the kitchen table, addressed in a careful hand. Her name stopped her breath. She hadn't seen that writing in over a year. The orphanage seal burned into the corner. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The boys were alive, both of them. Micah, now nearly 13. Samuel, just 10. Alive. Together. But the letter was not kind. Funds were short. The church was reducing numbers. Children without sponsorship would be relocated, possibly separated. Eliza sank into the chair, the room spinning. Caleb found her there, letter crushed in her fist. "What happened?" She tried to speak. Couldn't. He knelt in front of her instead, voice steady. "Eliza, breathe." She handed him the letter. He read it once, then again. "They're your sons." She nodded, tears finally breaking loose. "I lost them once. I can't do it again." Caleb stood, walked to the window, stared out at the land like it might answer him. "We'll get them." Her head snapped up. "What?" "I'll take you. They won't just give them to me." "Then we won't ask," he said. "We'll prove you can keep them." Her voice shook. "Why would you do this?" He turned back to her. "Because you matter." The words landed heavier than anything he had said before. They left before dawn. The ride was long. Cold mornings. Silent evenings they shared food, stories that avoided the sharpest edges. One night by the river, Eliza woke from a nightmare. Breath ragged. Caleb was there instantly, sitting beside her bedroll. "You're safe," he said softly. She leaned into him without thinking. He didn't pull away. On the third day, they reached the orphanage. The reunion broke her open. Micah stood frozen at first, taller than she remembered, eyes wary. Samuel clung behind him, thinner, quieter. "Ma," Samuel whispered. Eliza dropped to her knees and held them both, sobbing into their hair. "I came back, I promised." The Reverend asked questions. Hard ones. Where would they sleep? Who would feed them? What about schooling? Caleb stepped forward. "They'll live with me, on my ranch, with their mother." The Reverend studied him. "You married?" "No." "Planning to be?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. Eliza looked up at him, heart racing. "Yes," he said finally, "when she's ready." The boys went home with them. The ranch was never quiet again. Micah watched everything. Learned fast. Samuel stayed close to Eliza, fingers always brushing her sleeve. Caleb taught Micah to ride. Let Samuel help mend tack. One evening, as the boys slept, Eliza stood beside Caleb under the stars. "You changed everything," she said. "So did you." She hesitated. "I don't know how to be someone's again." "Then don't be yet," he said. "Just stay." She nodded. But trouble does not wait for healing. From the ridge, a horse watched the ranch lights burn, and Elias Mercer smiled. The first sign that peace never lasts came quietly. A gate left open. Caleb noticed it at dawn while saddling his horse. The north fence should have been latched. He checked the ground. Fresh hoof prints. Too many. Someone had been on his land in the night. He closed the gate without comment, but his shoulders stayed tight the rest of the morning. Eliza felt it even before he said anything. The way he watched the ridgeline. The way his hand rested closer to his belt. Micah noticed too. "Someone coming?" the boy asked while brushing down the mare. "Not today," Caleb said, "but maybe soon." That night, a calf went missing. The next day, another. Eliza tried not to show her fear. She kept the boys busy. Bread baking, lessons by lamplight. Small, normal things to hold the world together. But fear has a sound. It hums beneath everything. 3 nights later, shots cracked the dark. Caleb was on his feet before the echo faded. He grabbed his rifle and shoved the door shut. "Stay inside." Eliza pulled the boys behind the table, heart pounding. A shadow moved near the barn. Then another. Caleb fired once, a warning. The figures scattered, but laughter carried on the wind. By morning, the barn door hung broken. Carved into the wood with a knife were 2 words, "Lis or Los." Micah went pale. Samuel cried silently. Eliza pressed them close, rage rising beneath the fear. Caleb stared at the message for a long time. Then he scraped it away with his blade. "He wants to scare us," Eliza said. "He wants to force us," Caleb replied. That afternoon, Elias Mercer rode in openly. No threats, no weapons drawn. Just a smile. "You've got children here now," Elias said, eyes flicking toward the house. "That changes things." Caleb's voice was ice. "Get off my land. Lease the pasture," Elias said calmly, "or accidents keep happening." Eliza stepped forward. "You don't scare us." Elias smiled wider. "You sure about that?" He rode away. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. Eliza found him sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle. "You're thinking of giving in," she said. "No," he replied. "I'm thinking of protecting you." She sat across from him. "We protect each other." He looked up then, something raw in his eyes. "I lost someone once, thought I was doing right by waiting, by not choosing." Her voice softened. "You chose us." A knock sounded at the door. Caleb froze. The door creaked open. A neighbor stumbled inside, bleeding. "Mercer's men," he gasped. "They're moving cattle off your north pasture tonight." Caleb was already reaching for his coat. Eliza stood. I'm coming. No, I won't hide while you fight for us. He held her gaze, then nodded once. They rode under a moonless sky. Near the ridge, gunfire erupted. Chaos. Horses screaming, men shouting. Caleb dismounted, firing low. Eliza stayed back, rifle shaking in her hands. Then she saw Micah running from the barn. No, she screamed. A shot rang out. Micah fell. Time broke. Eliza ran, knees slamming into dirt, pulling him into her arms. Blood darkened his shirt. Ma, he whispered. I'm here. Caleb dropped beside them, ripping cloth, pressing hard. Stay with me, son. Mercer's men fled when more riders approached, neighbors drawn by gunfire. Silence followed. Micah lived, barely. They carried him home before dawn. Eliza sat by his bed for 2 days without moving. On the third night, Caleb knelt beside her. I can't lose you, he said. Not any of you. She reached for him. Then don't stand alone. He took her hand. I love you, he said. I should have said it sooner. Tears spilled freely now. Say it again. I love you, he said. I should have said it sooner. Tears spilled freely now. Say it again. I love you. Outside, the land held its breath. Because Alis Mercer had lost his patience, and men like that never lose quietly. Micah survived the night. That alone felt like a miracle carved out of pain and prayer. The fever broke just before dawn. Eliza had not slept. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers wrapped around her son's hand, counting each breath like it was something that could be stolen if she looked away. Caleb stood in the doorway, unmoving. He had not left the house since they brought Micah home. Not to eat. Not to rest. Only to stand watch when the dark pressed too close to the windows. When Micah finally stirred, eyes fluttering open, Eliza bent forward, breath shaking. Ma, he whispered. I'm here, she said. I'm not going anywhere. Ever again. He nodded faintly and drifted back to sleep. Caleb let out a breath he had been holding for days. But relief did not mean safety. By midday, word had spread. Neighbors rode in quietly. Men who had once kept to themselves now leaned on fence posts and spoke low. What Mercer had done crossed a line. Threatening land was one thing. Threatening children was another. Elias Mercer was no longer just a bully. He was a danger. That night, Caleb made his decision. Eliza knew before he spoke. She could feel it in the way he moved, in the steadiness that had replaced the tension. You're going after him, she said. Yes. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She only stood and rested her forehead against his chest. Come back, she whispered. I will. He kissed her hair, then Micah's brow, then Samuel's sleeping cheek. I'll finish this, he said, so they never have to be afraid again. The posse rode before dawn. They found Mercer at the North Ravine, moving stolen cattle under cover of fog. He laughed when he saw them coming, until he realized how many had come. There was shouting, accusations, guns raised. Mercer reached first. Caleb was faster. The shot echoed once, sharp and final. When it was over, Mercer lay bleeding in the dirt, his power gone, his threats finished. He was taken alive, bound, and delivered to the territorial marshal by sundown. The land went quiet again. This time, it stayed that way. Caleb returned at dusk, dust on his coat, exhaustion in his eyes. Eliza was waiting on the porch. He didn't speak. He just walked into her arms. She held him like she had once held grief, tightly, without apology. It's over, he said into her shoulder. She nodded. I know. That night, for the first time since she arrived at the ranch, Eliza slept deeply. Micah healed slowly. Caleb built him a stronger bed by the window so he could watch the horses. Samuel slept beside him every night, refusing to leave. Life returned in pieces. Laughter came back first, uncertain, then real. Micah began helping Caleb again, limping slightly, but determined. Samuel followed Eliza everywhere, learning to read by tracing letters and flour on the table. One evening, weeks later, Caleb found Eliza standing in the field at sunset, watching the boys race each other along the fence. "They're happy," she said softly. "They're home," Caleb replied. She turned to him then. "So am I." He took her hands. "I don't want to wait anymore," he said. "Not because of fear. Because of choice." Her chest tightened. "I was hoping you'd say that." They married quietly. No town. No crowd. Just the land, the boys, and a neighbor who brought bread and a jar of preserves. Eliza wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself. Caleb wore his cleanest coat, hands steady when he took hers. The vows were plain, honest. When Caleb said, "I choose you," it sounded like a promise made to the earth itself. When Eliza said, "I stay," it sounded like the end of a long road. The boys stood beside them, proud and solemn. Micah smiled for the first time without restraint. Samuel clapped too early and didn't care. They laughed. Life followed, not perfectly, but truly. Seasons passed. The ranch grew louder, warmer, full. Eliza planted a garden behind the house. Caleb added a second room. Micah learned to break horses with patience. Samuel learned to sing badly and loudly. At night, Eliza and Caleb sat on the porch, hands intertwined, watching the lights fade across land that no longer felt empty. "You ever regret letting me stay?" she asked once. He smiled. "You didn't stay. You arrived." Years later, when gray touched his temples and lines settled gently at her eyes, Eliza would still wake early and listen to the house breathe. This place had given her back everything she thought she had lost. Not the same, but stronger. Love had not rescued her. Love had grown beside her. And that was enough.